Hi everyone, welcome back to the Jansen Art Studio. Welcome to our continuing study on Van Hyacinth. Now what we've done is we've finished some of the general Grisaille. And again, this is just to establish some ballpark Grisaille elements, the values. They do not have to be perfect. And I know some of you are worried a little bit about your Grisaille. You've never painted anything like this before. Let me tell you that we are just ballparking. You can be 3 or 4 values off, like I've said earlier, and it won't make a difference. What we want to do is establish this crescent shape of light, and then we're going to slowly work on the detailed Grisaille. Now, when we do this detailed Grisaille, you can start anywhere within the crescent shape of light. You can start up there with our flowers in the main center of the painting. You can start down low with the grapes. It doesn't make a difference where you start. What you have to remember is these are production painters, these Dutch painters, and so they develop this technique so they can work on anything at any time. Okay, that's why we're using the grays. We're using the grays for several reasons. That's one of them, because we they want to preserve their pigments because those are the most expensive. But you can work on any of these at any time, and just remember that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to break the detailed Grisaille up into 2 steps. We're going to go through the painting here. This morning we'll go through some of the grapes, maybe into the peaches, maybe up into the flowers. But when we put the flowers on, you might want to put a little bit more of the detailed pattern on, which will be coming for you. But we're just going to start into those areas. And then we're going to work through the whole painting. Then we're going to come back and work the whole painting again. So again, this time we're going to refine it a little bit more, but it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. You need to get an idea for the painting on, develop it, and get an idea, refine the look a little bit more, and develop it and refine a little bit more. That's how we're approaching this painting. So if you make a mistake with this, it's easy to correct. The only thing you have to remember in each one of these Grisaille steps is this board must be absolutely flat, no texture to it whatsoever. So again, we're using very thin washes of color, and that's the Dutch technique. So what we want to do is we want to go in and we want to work and push back some of this area back into the shadow. I'm going to be working some of that, and we want to come in here and work some of these areas in here. Now, I am going to, this time I just put some of my Grisaille colors out onto the palette out like this, because I'm going to be working very, very small, and I don't want to constantly reach up into my palette, so I put some of them down. These are regular acrylic. Off to the side here, I have a little cap of extender medium. This is what I'll use just to slow it down a little bit, but it all depends on the area that you're working in. Here we have these small little grapes and stuff, so I don't need to globalize this or do any of that kind of stuff or worry too much. But I do want to put this extender out on some of these areas and glaze back. Now I'm going to glaze back, and we'll step back just a little bit here. I'm going to glaze back this and some of this area right back up in here. I'm not going to glaze back the entire painting right now. I don't need to. I'm going to just focus my eyes right into this particular area here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take just a second here and put a light coat of the extender medium on the surface here, right in where I'm going to work. The other way that you can do it very quickly, and since I've done a lot of these paintings, these Dutch reproductions, I can just take a paper towel like this and just wipe this over the surface here. It doesn't hurt anything. This paint is well dried. If you do this, make sure it's, it is really, really dry. This has been on and dried on here for several days, actually almost a couple weeks here. So I'm just going to put a light coat over the area here. It will create a little bit of a glare here because of the light, but we'll try to take care of that. So a light coat over this. This will allow me to work into it. Now, this is a technique I do when I use the Dutch. This is not a technique I do in alla prima or anything like that, but this is a technique I do when I do the Dutch, putting a light coat of the extender medium over the surface. It's like what the Dutch artist would do, put it on a very thin coat of very thin down linseed over the surface, which allows their brush to glide over the surface, and it makes smoothing out a little bit easier. The one thing that is important, though, is that you don't have too much of it onto the surface. You can re-wet it at any time, but you don't want to have too much of it on the surface. No puddles or anything like that. So you can see absolutely everything is flat. There's no puddles, and this will keep the colors from bleeding out. Now what I'm going to do is just take my brush here, and I'm going to push back a little. Let's take a little 3 and a little 1 here. And we're not going to go completely to our black colors here. And I want to thin this with a little bit of our extender medium. And I'm just going to come right through here and wash and push this right onto the objects here, and right on into the background here, pushing back some of my other background. I want to leave some of that orange glow here. You can see that there. I want to leave some of that orange glow, but I want to push some of this color back here. Before we get into some of this detail, I'm just going to push some of this back. So let me just move that over here a little bit. We'll push this back here. And this is a big board, so this will take a little bit of time here, but nice and thin here. And I'm going to let this, eventually this will be almost black. All this over here will be almost black here. And but I'm going to let this have a little bit of a modeling to it there. See that little bit of modeling? I'm going to let that happen because that's going to help give me some variation later on in the painting. Now, you can take a larger, older brush here like this and just go over this lightly to smooth it out. Make sure you have no brush marks or anything like that into your painting. That'll lightly smooth that out. And normally what will happen with me is I get my hand in that along the way somewhere and I have to correct it, but we've got a lot of pushing back to do. Now, you want to be able to take some of this off. Let me just grab, as a matter of fact, I can even use the same brush. You want to be able, you don't want to, it's on there real thin so it won't hurt anything. But what I'll do sometimes if I push the leaf down a little bit too much is I'll just take a little bit of water, and let's come in just a bit closer here, and I'll take just a little bit of water like this and go right over these leaves here to take that glaze off of those leaves. If I so instead of painting around something, I paint right over it. Then I'll just take a little water like this and just lift that color off of that leaf. Sometimes I'll leave that on, especially towards the end of the painting. We're going to be leaving some of this on. This is that would be a technique called houting, which the Dutch do when they're setting up their grisailles. Now this little guy has to go quite a bit lighter. You can also, a good thing to do is you can take just a little bit of water into your paper towel and wipe back that way as well, as long as you don't remove as long as you don't remove the glaze that's on the background here. So be a little careful with that, but you can remove some of that and take that off of there like that, so those objects will pop back up forward of that glaze again. In the last, towards the end of the painting, we're going to be doing what we call houting, which is pushing the background onto those objects and causing a harmony between the background and those objects, and that will cause them to recede. But we don't need to really do or worry about that too much right now. So I'm going to just add just a touch more black to this and go right back to my brush here again. And again, this is just a real quick a statement of some of the glazing of the areas here. I'll probably want to push just a little bit back in here, but I'm going to have a real light flower back here that'll be orange, and don't let the final photo make you think that that's the orange background. No, that's going to be glazed in there. This one's going to go pretty dark right back in here. So I'm just going to tap a little bit of that around here into these areas and just remove that. But don't try to be perfect with it, and that's the most beautiful part of it. Don't be perfect with it. You can just remove some of that off of your flowers there, but again, let these edges not be too defined right now, Matter of fact, I'm just going to let some of that's good howdy, just let some of that hit the bottom of that flower there. So it pushes some of that back like that. And we might want to push just a little bit more over here. And walk this out. Again, just walk that out here. And I'll just lightly hit that with my big brush, just to make sure I have no textures or anything like that in there. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm going to be glazing back. Let's get a little bit of this right in here. Grab our back towards our ones even here. And let's push back a little bit in here. We'll push back. We'll push some of this area back a little bit. Get rid of a little bit of our orange, and which will help that shadow in there. We don't want to do too much in here because we haven't painted the little pooty in the vase and all that kind of stuff yet, but we'll just push some of that back, soften that out just a bit, take out a little bit of our, if we hit the grape too much, but we're going to be painting those grapes today, so that will give us a good look. Very thin. I'm very thin so that I'm not destroying anything. Just very, very thin. Now I'm actually going to, before I go paint some of these grapes in here, I'm going to glaze them back, and then I'll wipe some of it out, but I'm going to be glazing them back. Now this glazing and painting is going to happen a lot throughout this entire painting. Like this glazing and pushing stuff back, and then bringing it back forward again. But pushing back some of that orange will allow just a little bit of that orange to come through in there. That's what we want to have here. And and because I'm not using global colors, these glaze colors will dry fairly quickly. Not super fast, but fairly quickly. I'll have about a half hour or so working time with them, so I have some time to get some of this worked out. And let's get some of this over here onto this side. Push this back a bit, allowing some of that orange to come through, but it'll start the lighting effect here onto my painting. And then I'll just wipe a little bit of that off of those grapes. Now see, I'm not being quite as careful on these grapes because I'm going to be coming in here and painting them in just a minute. So I'm just going to push a little bit of that orange back. Let some of it, but just push a little bit of that orange back here. Now, some people will say, well, why did we put all that and then we're just covering this up with glazes and stuff? And it's because the Dutch, the oranges and stuff, the grounds were done for a couple of reasons, like I said. One is that gives that glow to the color. And the other reason is that these oranges and stuff, that was a very cheap, inexpensive color for them because it was everywhere, all over the Netherlands. And so it was a good grounding color, but it does make your colors just glow. And so you will see some of it through all of these backgrounds and stuff. So, you know, it's a process. What they're doing is a process. They're doing it for a couple of reasons. You know, this painting, this glazing and stuff. Now I'm going to push some of this back here as well. This is dangerous area because I'll put my hand in this back here. But we'll just soften out some of my big movements of my brush. Allow a little bit of that orange to show through. I want this glow to come through here. I can move this up just a bit. You can see that I want that glow to come through there. Let's just move that right up there. So up here onto this side here, I'm going to continue on up the side here, but not yet, not this morning. We will just push this back here like this, and so I don't create a problem, I'll just feather this off right up here, and then that will let me come back in up there and add that in there. So I'll just feather that off. Make sure I have no textures. It's easy to feather that off, and we'll push that glaze right in there like that. Try not to. I use these big soft brushes. These brushes, big watercolor fusion brushes, because they are so soft, and they're actually nice, big, and wide, and so it just gets rid of all kinds of brush marks and all that kind of stuff. You see that smooth glaze, that happens right in there, so that works really well. So I will continue this down through here, and we'll push. I'm just going to let it hit the bottom of the table here for right now. And again, it is, you know, working the back and forth of the painting here. So we're working this back and forth. There we go. Just like that. So you can see now I've pushed back. I'm going to put maybe a tube of paint underneath here and see if I can raise this up. Get rid of that glow over there, that glare, excuse me. Now, I'll come right in here. This is where I'm going to be concentrating in this morning up in here, and we're going to swing up through our crescent shape of light here. So I'm going to zoom in just a bit for our painting, and we're going to start working here on our grapes. Now, for the grapes here, what we want to do is we want to come in and we're just going to be painting them for some roundness. Now you have a smaller filbert, like a 2 or a 4, depending on what you want to do. I'm going to do probably a little 4 here today. You can, but a 2 will work just as well. We have them both in the, in the plan, and I'm going to step back on my brush here, and I'm going to be looking at establishing the light again, and then working for a little bit of roundness. Now, again, when we start this, we're just putting in the suggested values now. We're just putting in a little bit of what we call the form shadow of the grape. This is called the form shadow. Now, the form shadow does not need to be perfect at this time because we will still have to glaze over this again, just exactly what we're doing here. But the form shadow is our first statement of roundness to the object, okay? And so it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect here. Now you can go in and assign your values. I'm going to just look at, you can wipe off each little grape if you want to, take a little bit of the water with a brush and wipe off to see what that value was before you got there. The other way that the Dutch would do it when they glaze like that is actually physically just remove some of that color, the glaze, right from where they have it, and they will start to form shadow. So in other words, if I am right in here and I say, okay, this grape is going to be highlighted right up into this area, I would start removing some of this just lightly like this glaze, and you would start to see the form shadow. So you can do that as well. But let's start right in here. I got this big light one that's going to come in here. This is going to be a light area that's up here. So I'm going to come back in with my number 4 filbert, and I'm going to grab some 10 here, and I'm going to bring this down just a bit right over that glaze, just a bit, so I don't get in too much trouble here. But you can see this is the white of my paper is my good 10, and then we'll come in just a bit more here, and I want to work right here in this area here. Now I'm going to end up putting my hand down at the bottom of this in that glaze, but that's okay, we can correct that. I'm going to start my 10 right in here, and I'll be a little bit careful this time. And so I'm going to light this up here. This is going to be one of my lightest grapes up into this area. And it's going to have a little reflected light down at the bottom, which is actually not quite a 10. So you might want to put a little 8 in it. But in all the grapes, let's just talk about the grapes. The grapes will have a little reflected light to the bottom side, right down there, to the bottom side. And then the shadow here is not really very dark, maybe down to an 8 or 7. Usually what I tell my students when they're painting grapes or they're painting small things like this, especially with the Dutch, there is not a lot of value control for roundness. Like if this was a big apple or something like that up here, we wouldn't have it. But when you look at a Dutch painting in here and you look at the grape, there's really not that much difference in the values between the lights and the darks of every one of the grapes. There's a difference in the values between the lights and the darks in the bunch of grapes, but there's not a lot of difference in values in the lights and the darks in the grape itself. Okay, and there will be in a peach, but there won't be grape. What you got to do is each individual little grape is being hit by a light in an area. It's not a large object, it's a small object. So its form shadow is very small on the scale. But a larger object that is able to express more light across the painting, it's going to have a larger use of the scale. So I always say grapes paint with about 3 values. So if you're highlighting up here with a 10, go down to an 8 to a 7, 3 values. That will be your shadow color that will come right into this area of this grape here. And we can be a little careful with that, but that will start a very small shadow here on this grape. And I'll just wiggle in a little bit of the lights now, and I'm not blending this. I don't want to blend this because we want this to have a little bit of modeling and movement. So we're going to have a light area, a reflected light area, and just a very, very, very soft shadowing. And it's going to be right down in here. Maybe we'll go down to just an 8 with a little bit of the 6 there, so I get a 7. Just tap a little bit of that down in here. So if you look at that particular grape that I'm painting there, you'll see just a little bit of the shadow. There's the light. There's the reflected light right in there. That is what you're looking for, okay? That is what you're looking for. So each one of these grapes, as we paint them, will have their established value. So this one will be a little darker. So let's go down a little bit and go a little darker. Try to find a value that's close to what you have there. It's a little darker down towards my 8. Now remember, it will dry down a little bit. So that's a good value drop down. So we will have the light area of the grape here, which I'll be a little bit careful because this one's up in front too. The light area, I will darken that down just a bit here. And we'll put on the reflected light color of the grape right there. And then let's just grab down to a little 6 or so here. Darken it down. And let's just get a little bit darker here. A little bit of a form shadow into that grape, right into there. So now you'll see this grape drops down to that. This one is lighter than that one. They both have a little bit of a form shadow. Both have a reflected light color. It's going to be there. And they're getting a little bit darker. Let's put a darker one in over here. So we'll put in the light area here very carefully. This one will sit behind it. We'll put in a little touch of the reflected light into there, and we'll go a little darker, maybe even a bit darker yet, right down in here. So I'm kind of following what I have established already and just refining it a little bit more with some smaller value. It's what you got to do is just say, okay, this is going to be fun because you're going to be doing this for a while. But once you get the hang of it, they'll go faster. Now I'll have a little bit of a shadow under here. And the best way to do it is to, we'll make sure in the lessons that we'll put some close-ups of the Grisaille that I'm painting here so that you can kind of, get close to that. Remember, the overall look just has to have this crescent shape of light. And we can change and adjust some of these grapes, a little bit further. Like, for example, this one has a flat edge. Now, sometimes at this particular stage, I wouldn't worry about it too much, but I'll just show you. You can put a little bit in there just to get rid of that there. But again, that's getting a little bit detailed that, we really don't need to get too much right now. But we'll just do it since I saw it. So I'll come back here, drop this other one back. That's going to be back here. Look at its value. Make sure that when you tap on your next color, it should be just a little bit lighter because it will dry down to about the value of that. So it should be about 1 to 2 values lighter when you tap it on because it will drop down. So we have a light area that's exposed here. It's going to have a little bit of a reflected light, and then we'll come in and paint its form shadow in here. Just right through this area here. Just tap some of that through. I'm using just little bits of paint. Let's go back up towards our 8s here. We'll drop this grape in. Now you can work 3-4 grapes. Once you start getting this, you can work 3 or 4 grapes of about the same value at the same time here. And they'll dry pretty quickly because I'm not using global color and I'm not adding extender to it. You can add a little bit of extender, but each one of these grapes are really small. And so the Dutch would actually, whoops, forgot to add the reflected light down at the bottom. A little stroke for the reflected light. But then we'll just add a little extender to that. You can mix up a little extender into these colors too, right into here. But you know, you're painting so small, these small little grapes, that you know you don't have to worry about letting it dry a little bit. And the Dutch actually use a little technique when it starts to dry out called scumbling, where they or actually scumble on or to put on these values. So that's got to be just a bit darker. That's better. Right in there. A little bit down through here. Let's just grab a little darker, just a little bit. So I have lighter colors, darker colors, and I adjust it. My colors, though, are very thin, so it's easy for me to adjust. But I'm just starting a little bit of the light. Now, I can take a little bit of the black and shoot that right in there like that to just get a little push back around those grapes a little bit. And look how it pops that front light grape there. See how that front light grape really is going to come out. So I just want to soften that into that. Here. You can use a larger brush and soften in, but again, we'll come through here with a real crisp detailing here in just a little bit. Or in the next lessons on the grapes, when we come back and revisit these grapes again, we'll come in and crisp up and refine them even more. And refine our lights, our light passage as well. Let's drop this down just a bit. That one. So look to the value that you've already established. Now, the one thing that I don't want you to do, and so many painters do this, they turn this into a paint by number. You don't want to turn this into a paint by number. The artist that did this, Van Hyacinth, Mignon, Deheen, when they did the Grisaille, they didn't do a paint by number. The values, this value scale that we are using here, was not even created until Munsell did it in 1910. So they didn't even have this knowledge. What they're doing is they're painting for light. And so they don't have to have absolutely everything absolutely perfect. But a lot of students, a lot of first-time Grisailles will start saying, okay, that's an 8, that's a 10, I got to worry about this Grisaille. Please remember, when they painted this, they didn't have a value scale. They didn't even know what value was. They painted it for light and dark. Light expression to dark expression here. And then you come back and you refine that expression, and you refine that expression over and over and over again until you get it completely to the way that you want. So you will come back and refine that expression several times during the painting, which is what we'll do. Okay, so something dries a little bit down, like right here, I might want to add a little bit more light. I will go through the painting and look again through the painting. Maybe I want to just brush on a little bit of that light right in here because that one dried down. A little bit of that light right in there. We're going to be doing that as we work individual grapes, then we work the whole, okay? So use what we've already established here. Use what we've already established. Don't sit there and say, okay, this is an 8, this is a 10, this is this. We're going to work for the light. I'm going to turn you into artists, not paint by numbers. You're going to work for the light. That's how they did it. And if you want to completely understand how they did it, then you need to paint like they do. They didn't use a value scale. They're painting for light. We know we have a little reflected light color, which is technically the reflected light color will be down from the light color, a value or so. But these grapes are so small, it doesn't make a difference because they're so small. Now that will make a difference on our bigger, larger flowers. So we'll put in a little bit of light, maybe even just on the small ones, just brush in a little bit more light right where the light highlight is going to be, and that's all it needs. Maybe not too much reflected light, just a little touch of that there. As you start refining these, here, grab my 8s, my 10s, my 6s here, and constantly have extender out. I usually put little bit of extender out on my palette here. So that right in there, soon you start to get that right in there is more towards an 8 with a little bit of 6 or so right in there. That's what I'm looking for, so that it will be just about a little bit lighter than what I have right now, because it'll dry down. And then we'll come in here and we'll jet on the light side. We'll put a little bit for the reflected light right down there. And then let's just grab a little bit of our, so if I'm down here towards the 8 and 6, maybe down towards the 5 and 4 for the shadow in here. Crescent shape of shadow on that grape. There we go, right in there like that. Okay, and we'll look, yep, that's about right in there. It's got to sit back. And I'm just going to put a little bit of shadow right in through there. There, like that. And again, some of these I don't blend out and smooth out. They don't. They're quick color exchanges. And in the light, in actuality, there are quick color exchanges. I watch so many painters when they paint grapes and stuff, and they don't get the life and the interest in it because they mop it and mop it and mop it. You don't want to mop it. Mopping it is not really truly seeing it. Now we will mop it. The reason why we don't really mop it, we soften it. The reason why we do that is to eliminate any brush marks. We don't do that to blend, because these painters are, let me put it this way. Light hits an object, and then, when it hits a plane, a lit plane, then it hits the receding plane, there's a kind of a quick change of light. It's not a blending, smooth, something like that. No, it's in a quick change of light as it changes planes. So you look at some of these paintings, they're not a whole lot of blending. I don't know what happened to us in the 90s and, in far as the, decorative painting industry, that we all became all this blending. There really isn't a lot of painting of blending in real life. It doesn't happen. So now what I do is I look at each one of my grapes, I look at what I have there, and I look at the value that I have there. So I'll push this one back a little bit. It has to be a little bit lighter, maybe a value or two lighter than what I have there already, and then I'll push that in. Then I'll drop the value down, 2 or 3 values, I like to think 3, and put a little bit of shadow in there, so my grapes start to become a little bit more round here. And this is the kind of detailing of your grisaille that will take a little while. This is one of the largest part of the paintings. I'm going to go through and work, show you now that we're starting to understand this a little bit more. Work a little bit faster, because this is how I like to do it, because I know I will be changing some of this. And work some of my lighter area grapes. Because remember, one of the things that we will be doing is glazing down, okay? And the color, the value of the color that you'll be using as a glaze will push some of this further back as well. So you want to keep that in mind as you're painting. That glazes are going to come over the surface of this, and that can also be used as a shadow. So let's drop that in. Let's drop a little bit of our shadow. This is a bigger one, so I'm just going to push this brush down like this and just tap and move the brush around a little bit for a little bit of a shadowing there. Little shadowing interest there. So let's clean that one up. Some of the real back ones I might not do too much to right now, just as I'm just starting this detailing here. We might do a little bit, but not too much. A little bit of shadow. That was a little dark, but it's okay. I can take a little bit of the black and smooth that right in there. In between, not pure black, just kind of grayed black. Put that in before I come back and clean these up again. There we go. And work it back and forth. And that's the nice thing. See, when some of this that I just put that background on, gets onto the grape, it'll darken it down a bit, and then I'll bring it back, and that will create some more interest, value interest into the grape when I let a little bit of that background glaze just hit that grape. And just allow that to happen. Here we go. Let's go back up. Here we got a couple of real light ones that we're working on right up here, and we'll drop that light in. This one here. So follow what you already have. Don't sit there and say, okay, this is going to be, you know, assign every single grape here a value. That will drive you nuts. And it's no fun to paint that way. What you want to envision is your light movement through here. So I'm going to put this on, then I'm going to evaluate my light movement and say, okay, I'm going to scumble in a little bit of light onto this grape and this grape and this grape, and refine and slowly refine that movement, making sure I have 3 values for around this, and then I'm putting in that light. That's what I want you to do. We want to be able to look at that light. So now when I put this on here, you can see that's going to be a little bit too light right in there. And a good way to fix it is to take a little bit of your black gray here that you're putting onto this background and just go over that a little bit here. And that'll help clean up that area and drop that gray right back down again. And then let's just push on a little bit of light. This is why I love this little fusion like this. And then we'll drop in a little, we'll carefully just put in a little bit of that detail shadow in there. Not too much there, just a little bit of that here. And I'll move that up just a bit for you. Okay. And so you got all of these back down in here. And we're going to go 6 down to a little 3 here, down towards our 5s. Probably that's light, but it's not quite light enough. I'm going to go a little more 6. There we go. Right in there. And then let's just darken that down. Just a brush, just a bit. This is where I love this little fusion brush. I'm using it just on this. You can see where my hand is right back here. And I use it just on its little edge, and it just works so, it establishes this so fast because the brush is so soft. And that's what they did. They used little squirrel brushes, faux squirrel brushes, or we're using faux squirrel brushes. They used real squirrel brushes to paint these, and they're very, very soft here. Let's put a little bit of shadow in there. There we go. A little bit of shadow in there. And we can push a little bit of our darker black glaze right back in there. Just a bit of that. Just to work that around a bit. Back around in here. So you can see this bunch of grapes starting to come to life as I'm working down through here. And I will come in and I'm just going to pop a little bit of 10, almost like a 9 right in here, and pump some of these up just a bit here so I get that nice light through this area. Just a little bit of that. I'm watching the light rather than getting fixated on the value, which they didn't do. I'm watching the lights. Now this one behind here is a little bit darker, so we'll push that back just a bit. Remember, put it on a little lighter, and then we'll push just a little bit, at least 3 values down for the shadow. And let's just take some of that. We'll come right down here. That'll probably be a little, yeah, it was a little light. Here. Drop a little bit of that right in there. Drop this down here. And we'll put in a little bit of our reflected light right down here at the bottom. Now I'm going to drop down at least 3 values and drop in its shadow. And I'm probably going to have just a little more darkness in that. Drop in its shadow here. And let's just tap through with some of that light and smooth that just a bit. There we go. Once you get into it, it starts to go really quick as you start to feel the technique of the grapes, and your eyes get adjusted to the Grisaille again, and you can start moving a little faster. So I'm just going to tap in a little shadow in there. Just tap in a little shadow right in there. And I'm going to take a little bit of my black. Let's just push that in real carefully here. Not super careful because we're not into that, but we do want to be a little bit careful so we don't create more and more and more work for us here. There we go. Right in there. And that is just a little dark, so I'm just going to tap a little light right in there. Because remember, some of that is not shadow, it's a grape sitting behind it. So, but you will get like little things over the edges of it, and you can take the time to smooth that out, but I wouldn't do too much because we have another layer that we're going to come around and clean up and do more detailing on it. So the detailing of the Grisaille is going to come in a couple of layers. We're not going to try to answer all the questions right away. I'm going to get some of my one down here and add some of this in. Down and around these grapes on the table. Right back underneath that peach there. And then we'll grab a little 3 to probably 4 right up in here. Yep, that works. Drop that grape in. Put a little bit of light onto that one. There. It'll have a little bit of a shadow in a crescent shape down like in through here. Down in through there. There we go, down in through there. Like that. We can, you can come through and you say, okay, I looked at this and this one maybe can come up just a bit. So I'll just grab a little bit there. I love to use the towel. I just wipe my brush on the towel rather than pinch wipe it or anything. Wipe it right on the towel. And I'm going to push this grape, this edge of this grape in front of this. This is some of the stuff you can slowly change. So it needs to be a little bit lighter right there. That's getting a little detailed, but that's okay. We'll do that right now. Just make sure you have no textures. No textures. And let's grab some of our 6. We'll drop some nice 6. Tiny touch of 8 maybe. Little extender just to keep the color thin. When we're using the non-globalized colors though, we have to constantly keep remembering to feed them extender because they will dry out. And let's drop the value down. Right down here. Down to right about into the 4 range or so. Right in here. And a little bit darker. Down here, a little clef. Here. So a little bit more roundness. Then we'll have a shadow that's down on this side that will be a little darker, probably down to a 3 or 2 right down in here on this side. We'll drop some of that in here. And there, get that roundness in there. Grab just a little bit for the reflected light, which will come from the grapes and stuff there. And a little darker, 2 or so there. Soften that out a bit. There. We'll just scummer, just lightly blush on a little bit more light right in here, and that's a little flat, so I'm just going to lightly just blush on a little bit. I love to leave, when I paint the peaches in the Dutch style though, we'll drop the value down just a bit here in the brush. Just lightly kiss the surface here. And I love this little modeling that comes when you do that, when you're just brushing the surface ever so lightly like that. If you establish the colors, that is just such a neat look. Now we'll just clean up this little edge here. You see, you start to get a little bit of that roundness there to that peach, and then we'll take a little bit of our Grisaille dark, which is this side is gonna go quite dark, and we'll just drop some of that dark here, 2 to 1 right in there. Down like that. Around. And just a little bit of shadows. We're going to go in and put in cast shadows and all that kind of stuff. But we don't have to worry too much about that right now. We'll head over here towards our blue grapes, and we'll establish some more dark value right down here. Almost down into our 1s now. I don't always like to go to a 1 because I always like to leave myself a little space, you know, to work the values in a little bit more. So I know that I can always go darker, but let's just scrub on a little bit. Make sure that I don't have any textures in that. Love using this little brush like this and just kind of scrubbing it around. And I'm going to actually let it, you know, hit some of the grapes. So I'll put them back on, but let them hit a little bit here and there, and that will help that actually physically what we'll do later on, the houting. Now I'm going to go up to like a 3, maybe a 2 or 3, and that's about as light as I want this area to be, 2 or 3, and I won't use too much of a shadow on there, because they're already shadowed pretty good, and these are out of the center of interest, so we want to just lightly give the idea that they are there, but we don't want to put too much into them. Just give the idea that they are there. Here. Down like that. And this one in there. And we'll just blush in some of these right on that, starting where the light would be. But you know, when they're out of the light like this, you just barely see them. So there's not much to them. We'll put that one right up there like that. We'll give the idea of this one. So you see they start to get a little more form. Then I'm going to lighten up a bit as I come back out of this area, back up over here, maybe heading back up to almost our 6 here, 5 or 6. That's a bit light. Test it on your area, and rather than constantly referring to your value scale, We've already painted, adjusted these for some value. Now what we're doing is just refining them. And again, I'm more worried about my crescent shape of light than I am each individual value of each individual grape. So we'll put those on there. Then I'm going to come through with a little bit of a slightly darker shadow. Here. There we go. That's refining them up. Make sure you feed your colors up here some more extender so they stay wet. That's a bit light, so we'll adjust that down. But again, if I put it on there and it's close, that was just a value or two off, and it's close, I wouldn't worry too much about it because we'll change it now. This one is going to stay very light. This one that's right here is going to have a little bit more light right up here because it's going to sit on top of that peach. So we'll just come through and let's just express that light right now. Make sure that that's expressed right there and right there on those. There will be a little bit of a light shine. That's too light. Just a little bit of a light shine right in this area of those. So I'll tap that in and then we'll just soften the edges of it. Not mop it, just soften the edges of it because that modeling will give so much interest to the flowers when we're done. We'll work probably down around our 2 right back here. Let's get our value 2s in. Right back here, there's a couple of real dark grapes that will sit right in front of this light area here. And we can probably take a little bit more of our glaze here. I don't want to go too, completely dark because we want to be able to glaze again. So but we'll just push this back just a bit more right in here. There we go. Soften this out. And that softening is softening it, but it's mostly to remove any kind of brush marks and stuff like that. I love to use the soft little fusion just to work the areas like that. So that goes pretty well there. And then we'll continue on here. And up through here we have some real light ones and stuff, so we got to do these other grapes up and through here. And we want to try to get up to these peaches and stuff today. So we'll get this. And that 8 is good. Here again, we're going to have a little 10 and stuff on this later on, smaller amounts. Drop it down just a bit, about 3 values, and put in its form shadow. So you have the reflected light and the form shadow on these guys right here. Now that it might be a bit light for that area, but we'll see. It's working pretty nice with this one. Let's drop a little more 8 and so on this one. Increase that up there just a bit. Then what that does is it causes that one to push back. I kind of like that one, but we'll see. We'll drop this one in. Grapes are fun to paint, but they are a little tedious. They are little details. So I just like to just tap around and play with this brush like that. Tap the colors back and forth. darken them down just a bit and go to that next one back there. The problem is you can work several grapes at a time, but like I said, and that's a good thing because that'll make you paint faster. But the problem with that is that you run the danger of making too many of them the same. And I like the subtle little variations that happen when we shift around like this, when I work my colors just like this. So I can even establish more light area right to my dark area and just tap through these colors here. Since I got so much light on my brush, I'll come right over here towards my one that's in the 10. Let's establish a little form shadow through it. There, and let's put it into this one. Drop that down just a bit. Paint this light one that's up here. So now they're getting just a little bit of shadowing in them. And so that one there, let's drop it down just a bit. And you can take some of your darker Grisaille and go in through here. But one of the things you got to remember, like down in this area here, the shadows there are not black. They're more of a gray, maybe down around a 4 or so, because there are other grapes sitting down in between them. So as I'm cleaning this area up, I'm not going to go to black this time, my darkness, because these are other grapes down in through here. I'm just going to tap a little, like a number 4 or so, down through here. Down and around. And around like that. So that kind of fills that area in there. Now we'll come back and clean up just a bit around this to some of these grapes. There. Little tiny light ones here. Just like that. Little tiny ones there, you kind of hold your breath a minute. There we go. I'll clean up this one here. There, like that. This reflected light on this one gets a little flat, so I'll just round that up just a touch. There, like that. Maybe just take almost like a 9 or so here. Well, let's just increase the light on those just a bit in there. Some of these, this helps them hit towards the light just a bit more, because this will dry down. So we don't want to touch that one. But there's a whole group of little light ones right in here. So come back up towards these light ones up here. And a little shadow through the center. Little bit of the reflected light right in there. But there's other ones down here at the bottom that I got to do as well, and we'll get them. It's kind of nice to work around a bunch a little bit, but if you don't do it kind of systematic, you'll end up forgetting a few of them. But It won't hurt to forget some of them. You know, the biggest thing that you got to do with this painting is relax. You know, we have a lot of grisaille left to do, and then the coloring will go pretty quickly, but the, you know, it's a refining process. Don't jump to being something so perfect so quick. So many of my students do that, and it's like, where's the fun in the painting? You realize you're refining this. Have some fun and relax. You know, they always say, oh, I screwed it up. You cannot screw up anything. It's paint. And eventually everything here is going to be pretty opaque. You know, Mignon and Dehim in the Grisaille process would allow a little bit of that background to show through, in some, especially in the outer flowers, and especially when they're houting. But Van Hyacinth became known as his Grisaille layers would completely disappear under layers and layers and layers of detailed paint. The Grisaille was done, yes, to save preserved colors, but also done to give the artist the ability to see the painting. And that is a process of evolution. Don't sit there and say, I screwed it up. So many of my students, they'll write or they'll post on the forum, oh, I screwed it up. No, you haven't screwed up anything. It's paint. We can change anything. Especially since we're painting in thin layers here, everything is easy to change. It's easy to change. So just make sure, here's what we're doing. We're just taking a little bit lighter value than what we have. That's just because that value is going to dry down. We're putting on a light here, a light area here, which is the light side. We're then flipping down and putting just a little bit as the reflected light of that down there, and then the shadow, at least 3 values between. And that's it. And you know what? You can make a few mistakes and everything. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect at this level yet. Here. Down like this. And we'll put just a touch of that reflected light. Put a little bit of the shadow going through it. A little bit of the shadow going through here. If you get up into these areas, you're going to have grays and stuff behind here. It's another grape or so underneath there. So won't go to black. We'll go down to a gray, like a 4 or so. Paint out just a bit. And move some of this around. Here, like there'll be other grapes back in here. Other rounding shapes. Right back in there like that. So it's not always in between. Don't go doing all these black outlines and stuff, because you got to remember this is a bunch of grapes. There'll be grapes underneath these grapes. So we don't want to do black outlines and stuff. I'll just work that around. Certainly there's edges here that could be cleaned up and rounded up a little bit more. I'm not going to worry. Sometimes I will play with it a little bit, but you know, it's a waste of time because we're going to be doing it again. But you can. It is enjoyable to paint. I love to paint it. So, I mean, you can put as much detail and much work into it as you want, but it's all of it doesn't have to be perfect right now, because we're going to come back and revisit this again. I'm going to take like a 9 here, almost my 10, and lighten this up just a bit right in here. I know it will dry down, but I'm just going to lighten this up just a bit. Tap through there and just work that in just a bit. That's because I'm looking for that light to go down in through here. And that's another little thing where, you know, you're refining the grisaille a bit. back here. They're right down in this area is more grapes, and I can see that like maybe this grape here can be a little bit lighter than what I actually had it. So as I'm looking through here, this one can actually come up a little bit lighter, not to our 10s, but maybe to a good solid 8 or so. And the reflected light on that one is quite light. And that does help that crescent shape of light go through that jet right on through there. And then we'll establish some other little grape shapes here. Back into this area. Just ideas of them. Just use a little shadow and a little light, but don't need black. Just establish some ideas of other grapes back in there. And we'll put a little shadow. I'm using like a little 2 here, just to little value 2. Put a little shadowing around some of those. And we'll, maybe there's a little tinier one right in here, more detailed that you see, so we'll just add him in, just like that. See how quickly those go in? Once you start putting some of those, values in there, you can make quick little ones in there to fill in. That's a lot easier sometimes to do it that way than it is to, put on all this detailed pattern and work it and work it and work it, work it, work it. No, you can just, put some color in there and just go, whoop, whoop, there's a little grape sitting right back in there. Work the big ones. Work the big areas of color, then go in and start to refine it. And that's how you look at it. Even in alla prima, in good alla prima painting, we say you start it with a huge brush and you finish it with a smaller brush. That is it's like one of the tenets. John Singer Sargent said that about one of the tenets, and Helen Van Wyck, which I love her alla prima paintings. She says you started with the broom and finish it with the needle. Well, basically, we start out big painting a lot of this stuff and then start thinking smaller, smaller, smaller. And that's a good way in your mind. That's a good way to put this impression. Look at the large, and then slowly, as we define, and work more layers, then we'll get smaller, and our vision and our detailing will get smaller and smaller. That's a good way to do that. It keeps you from going crazy on all the details, of the painting, especially a large painting like this. Look to the large and then start to small it down, detail-wise, cleaning up and working it again and again and again. As you're working through your grisaille. So there's more darks and stuff back through here. I just might put a little bit more of a darker glaze right back in here. Push some of this back. Right back into this area, and you can see what that does is it really pops these grapes forward here. We'll come right around that guy. That's a very, this is one of the most important grapes on the composition is right here. It sets the main depth here, between that back area and this area here. It sets that main depth. And we'll push that in there. Around. And put a little more light just to help go back and clean up that edge just a bit. here. There we go. And we'll just clean up some of that edges and stuff there. Now the actual grapes here are very dark. They're blue ones and stuff, but we'll just give a little bit of an idea to some of their shapes here with maybe some two and stuff that will glaze down. Here. A little bit of the light every once in a while. But some of this will be real dark, you know, colors, and the shapes back here, almost blacks here. Almost blacks to help some of these. Creates that contrast, that light dark contrast right in here. Here and there we go, and around here a little bit more dark around those. Here, and just the ideas of them right in here. Just the ideas. Of the grapes. Like grape shapes. Here, darker colors. These will be your dark blue grapes here. Dark shapes. There, that puts those in there, and a real big jump in contrast here between where the green grapes and the blue grapes end here. Now this, I'm just putting some dark down in here because the shadow down in here will be dark, but there'll be a green grape sitting right up in here. And so I'll put that in there like that. Just soften some of that out just a bit. Then I'll come back with my gray, maybe a 3 here. Might be a bit light, but... And it is just a bit light, but that's okay. We'll just work that around, tap that in. That will be where the back edges of those green grapes will be right in there like that. Back edge of those right in there like that. So we have a few more here. Right down at the bottom and stuff down here. We can work on Grisaille a little bit more on some of these. Clean up here. Now you know, the thing is these will dry darker, so you know you might have to come back and you know check your values and again, you know, some of these grapes will dry down, and you know how much you want to paint. You know, how much you want to lighten these up is contrast, and some of my students like more contrast, some of them not quite so much, and so don't be afraid to change it to what you would like as well. You know, if you want more contrast and stuff into your painting, you know, add more lights throughout this particular part of the process. I have some smaller light ones. 8 with a little 10 here, so about a 9 or so. We'll just lightly clean up these small little ones right here. I love this group of grapes that he paints here because the size differences of them are really nice. So many times, you know, artists today too, and myself included, in many things, we will end up painting all the grapes exactly the same size. And this is a good one here that shows you that grape, you know, sizes change. I just go through and it's a little detailed, but clean up just a little bit more edges here. Retouch some of the lights here. Retouch those lights. There we go. A little bit there. And then just tap a little of that dark. So you put on the light, put on the reflected light, put on the shadow, go back, do it again. This edge of this grape will come right down there like that, and it goes right down into the shadow here of the peach. Just cleaning up a bit some of their shapes before we head right over to that peach. There we go. Now I'm going to come through, though, just to show you what we're going to be doing a little bit later too. I'm going to come through one more time here, grabbing some of my tin right down here, and I'm just going to take my tin right over here towards this, but this is going to establish, and see it just darkens it down just a little bit. But I'm going to take some of my tin here on my brush here. I'm going to come back in and restate some of my tin, and I'm going to go looking over at the light area of the, I'm going to, you know, hold my finished painting in you know, where I can look at it really well and start to look at where my crescent shape of light is through these grapes here. I'm going to thin this down, so go to 10s to 9s here. And one of the things is about a Grisaille like this is that you have to set those lights several times because they sink in. We're painting very matte, and so they tend to sink in. So, yeah, so I'll work my lights. I'm going to work my lights through. There's some hitting right here. Here, I'll let that be just almost a little dry brush. Work your lights. Let's just work that light right in there. So watch this going through. There's a real nice little spot of light right in there. That's a little bit detailed, but this is what I like to do. So after I've worked the group, I'll come through the group again here, thinking just lights, and let this be just modeled. Don't blend that in there. Let that be modeled. Matter of fact, let me just zoom in here real close so you can see here what some of this modeling. See, this is not smooth. See the modeling that I'm doing in here, and that will glaze up beautiful, because the glaze will tend to smooth it out a bit. Okay? And so that will glaze up just really, really pretty. I'll work a little bit of my lights again. Right through here, because they dry down. And that's a bit light. Here. There we go. There we go. There we go. comes through. So see that light that's coming through here. And what I'm actually doing is almost what we call a half-tone technique. Put a little color on, and then you can set the adjacent tone, the adjacent value next to it there, and soften that out. There's no blending. We don't want to blend because the glazing will soften everything out. Just make sure you have no texture. No mopping. But they did use very soft brushes like this, like what we're doing here. So there we go. So work that through there. Right up here, back up to my tans and stuff here, which, you know, I'll take right back up here onto this side. Just work them again. And you see, I'm not too, I'm a little careful to their shape, but I don't have to be perfect because we will be, you know, doing some cleanup and cast shadows. And so cast shadows add a lot to the actual physical cleanup of the, I like to do this, just kind of tap in. Now see, that right there will just glaze in so well, overglaze with color so well if you leave a few of those. I know it's hard because you want to smooth some of it out, but don't smooth too much because the glazes will do that. So avoid the habit. I'm going to put a smaller, lighter one in here. In this area, he has a lot of small little grapes. So I'm just going to tap in a little smaller, lighter one. But I will do stuff like this, you know, come back, what they did too, worked lights several times, coming back and just redefining and working the lights one more time to help set lights, you know, especially through the movement here. We'll step back just a little bit so you see that movement here through your grapes, that light movement here through your grapes. And so it's going to swing right down in here a little bit. So I need to work. I want this lighter and lighter, but then swing a little bit more here. And I got a little bit of a hole or flat area here. So I will look at that and let's just put on a little bit more light right on a couple of those right in here. That's going to help this. Doesn't have to be as light, but it's going to help that movement of light right through this area here. Right through in here. And there we go. You see that light moving right up in through here. Again, there's a couple of smaller little ones like right in here that can be lighter. Nice little ones right in here. Oh, that's a bit too light. Let's just drop that down just a bit. And it's nice, you can, you know, now that you have the Grisaille going on there, you put something on in there, and if it looks too light, just take a little bit of a darker gray and go through it, and it'll usually make the right value. But don't go through it too many times. Leave some of that variation, some of that modeling, so it's not smooth, because those will glaze beautifully. We want some of this, we don't want a smooth Grisaille. So when we glaze it, you'll get some of this movement of interest, because the glazing colors, it's going to be like looking through something through sunglasses, because it'll push it back and kind of soften everything out. So when we put on these layers of color and everything on this glaze and do a little bit of, you know, smoothing, that will cause everything to smooth. So you don't need to blend any of this. Leave it a little brushy, and, you know, they would even scumble. You know, real, almost like a dry brush to it. So go back and work through some of the lights. And I'm going to do this several times through my center of interest area right in through here like that. So go back and work the lights, get almost to 10 right up in there, and then work it through here. Work a little bit less down in here, but still has the light. A little bit less, but still has the light. Here, but works that through. And a little bit more of this light down in here at the bottom. Look for the lights. Let's not get wrapped up in too much into the value scale. Look for the movement of the lights, through your composition. It's dying off in here. I know that I could be, there's, this guy that's right up here, this one that sits here, and this one that sits up here, and there's a small one here. Now that you look at the final, these guys can be a little bit lighter out through here. So this one could have a little bit more of that light expressed right out there like that. That would carry right on into this one, especially this one. If you look at it, it's got a nice reflected light, reflected light side over there. Little tiny light one right over here. Real contrasty tiny light, almost like a little spotlight sitting right there. We'll drop that one in here, and then a little bit more of a light right here that finishes off this crescent shape here. A little bit. That's a little too light back there. So I don't take it off, just take a little dark and go over it and work it in. There. Good, that's there like that. And we'll drop down here. There we go, down like that. So you can see this nice working of the lights through here. And let's go over and let's work on these peaches here for a bit. I'm going to take some, because my extender is dry in this area. So I'm going to put some extender over my peaches here. Let's work them. This is good for you to get to the Grisaille. When we get, I'm doing a lot of detail, a lot of painting with you. When we get to the final areas into the back, I'll do this with where you can see everything when we're painting up in this area. When we get to some of these outline areas, we'll be jumping a little bit faster because there's not, a tremendous amount of detail that needs to be done up in there. And so we'll move a little bit, quicker. But in here, we'll move, pretty good. For an hour and a half, getting some of that nice roundness there to those grapes. We still need to have some more. We need another layer on it, but it's right about where I want to take now. Then we're going to really crisp them up, get that nice lost and found edges to them. We're not painting the edges too much right now. We're painting the light. Okay, we're going to define the light and then paint the edges. Okay, so let's come back in here. I'm going to establish a little bit. I don't want to establish a perfect cast shadow because I think of cast shadows as a different layer all by himself. But we will have some of this sit down into shadow here, into this peach here on this is shadow that will help us to round up our peach. And we'll set some of this shadow. We have other things like we have a big stem that's going to come right down here on our peach as well. I'm just going to move this, and I love to just get back on this brush and just kind of scrub when I paint a peach like this. I just kind of scrub. Let's get some medium value here. Now remember, in the light area, this is the light area of it. Go try it until you see it a little bit lighter, and it could be just a bit lighter than what you have there now. That's good. Now I'm just going to scrub this right in there. Then we'll drop it down a bit, and I'm going to take it right up to the edge of this grape here, and even put a little bit of a shot. I don't want to like ring it, but we Want to get rid of some of that orange. Right around there like that. And we'll drop the value down a bit as we come back in here. Just kind of using my brush. I love to use it like sideways like this. And it's almost, it is, you know, not a perfect, I'm not blending. What I'm doing is just dragging it like this. And what this does is it creates this modeling and movement to the surface. Because peaches are not smooth. And they're fuzzy and they got all kinds of stuff going on in them. So we want to keep some of this color moving here. Now as we bank this, let's take a little more light. Let's drop it right in here. There we go. We'll create some of this nice movement. Now let's take a little bit darker shadowing. So I'm using, excuse me, just basically the same values that I had on here. I'm just redefining them again. Now this is a very soft little shadow down here, so I'm just going to just lightly indicate that shadowing there on that peach. And we'll put a little bit of the, right, but see how this kind of, see how I hold my brush, and I really like to use the edge of it like this, just because it keeps it from blending too much. Using just a little chisel of the brush to go like that. And I want to grab a little more light right up in here and just kind of scrub this through. Very light, but my brush, I'm barely even pushing my brush. There we go. Just like that. So you see you get this nice lovely movement in there. Now I'm going to put the lighter bit in. Let's go to a solid 8 right in here. Right in here is a real light. And of course we'll, just like the grapes, we'll revisit this again. Here we go. And adjust anything that needs to be adjusted later on, and this light can go almost to that grape. You don't want to create a ring around that grape. There we go. Little bit of the shadowing here. As you can see, it's the whole feeling of this is to just slowly refine it. I'm going to take some of that 8 and put it right in here on this grape, so they're almost exactly the same values there. They really, that grape really kind of blends in to that peach right there. We'll take just a little bit of that lighter right there, just to break it off a little bit there. Now let's come up and do this guy up here. And again, let's get down on a 4, 3 to 4. Maybe even down there to that good solid 3, almost to a 2 right down here. And then we'll add the shadowing here into the cleft. Let's get some of it right up here by this back edge. Small, small, small brush movements there. Okay. And we'll put just a little more shadowing into the cleft here. There, like that. Now, let's get up to our 8s. At least up to towards our 8s, 9s. See, that's a little bit lighter. That's good. Maybe I'll put a little bit of that on and scrub this for a little bit. Then just add a little dark onto my brush and scrub through that a bit. This is almost like a, you know, I'm toning it down. Well, then we'll drop a little bit more here, scrub through that. I'm just going to wipe my brush here and then just scrub through now just take these and just move your brush for roundness here. Small, little short, choppy movements here. And I always use my paper towel, kind of wipe that off, and we'll restate our light a bit. There we go. And around. There, like that. And there's a deeper form shadow right down over here on this side, so I'm just going to take a little 2 here and just establish a little bit more of the form shadow on that. A little bit more 2, taking the 3 and the 1 here down to about 2. Down in this area for that nice form shadow. Little bit of reflected light right up here on the edge, but get that 2 right down in there. And then we'll drag some of this through and up. Get a little bit lighter here, 8 almost to a 9 now, and then almost to your 10, but let's leave it at about a 9 or so. This will dry down and it'll flatten out a little bit, and then we'll redo it. We'll do it again, just lightly with the brush. I want to keep some of this movement, just light little touches with the brush. Do not mop this. Just see how I'm just slowly curving around. You can use your finger to touch through, but I want to leave some of this. Let's zoom in there just a bit. I want to leave some of this modeling that's all in there. See that? That movement that's all in there. That adds so much to it, because it's, like I said, it's all going to soften out. You can hit it like once or twice with the big brush. If you don't have the brush skills down real light, you can just go like this. I mean, if you don't have that nice light touch, you can go like this a little bit to take some of that off. And I picked up some of that dark in there, but see, that doesn't bother me. But see how it just takes some of that off. I want to leave some of that in there. That other thing of touching it, something like here, doesn't bother me at all, because I know I just lightly come like this with my little fusion brush, and it just softens it right out. But see, even that will create more modeled movement and interest into it. So don't try to be perfect with it. Let some of that happen, and see, you get this nice movement in there. I really like to do, and we're going to be doing some some brush scumbling into this. So, and which we'll do probably after we have the fine detail of the other Grisaille, the other flowers. That'll take us 1 to 2 lessons, and then the final detailing of the Grisaille. When we show that, we're just a couple of lessons away from that. Then the color. There we go. That's pretty good. There. See, that's got nice movement in there. It's got a nice roundness to it. There will be a little bit more of the light, because this is going to dry down. So I really want to make sure I do express that light right up in there. So that'll sit nice. And so you can really see that this is really a good area right here to really show the difference between what the Grisaille this time is doing and what our first Grisaille was. So now we're coming in and refining it a little bit. And then the next Grisaille will do almost the same type of thing. That's what I'm thinking about. Is I'm not thinking about making it perfect. I'm thinking about refining it. And so now you're seeing what this one was, what we're doing. It really is what we're doing is form. We're giving it its first form. So you look out through here. Yes, this has a little bit of form because we added a little bit in there. But we were most concerned with the value of the placement of that object. Now we're coming in and refining that form just a bit, and you know, that's what's working the best. Now I'm going to take a little 2, almost to a 1 down here, and we'll drop in some deeper shadow right down here. That there's going to be a little flower that's going to sit in to this one here, and that'll drop that in there. And let's just go right underneath this one right here through here to the, this is the contact shadow area. A little quick to add that, but we might as well add some of that in there because that'll give you a good feeling for this peach sitting on the ground here. And I'll move my brush sideways like this, side to side. That'll give the feeling of the plinth. So my movement here goes like this instead of the round movement of my brush when I'm painting the other one. That'll give the feeling of the plinth, which of course these leaves and stuff are going to come down in front of and everything. So let's take some of our 3 or so, 3 to 4 right in here, and we'll round up this part of the peach right in there. We'll scumble in just a little bit of the dark into that. That's the reflected light. Now here comes the shadow here. Okay, and we'll just continue this up here. Like that. And around the corner here, around this. And I'm going to take a little bit of that 2 right in here. Might as well express that deeper shadow right there. That will help really bring these peaches forward here. We'll just scrub this off for right now. Just get that nice corner shadow, that nice triangle shadow right down in there. Right down there like that. No real clef on this one, but we do paint it for roundness, so I will take a little bit of my 3 here, just a touch of the 2, a touch of black into the 3. We'll continue that there. The lighter area up in here, let's go to a 6 and an 8. Let's try a 7, and we might even go to an 8 this time. In here, and looking at that together right across here. And I'll push those together, and then just drop the value down a bit. This is how I like to do it, and just slide that next value right in there together, all the way down to your shadow. Scumble those together. Just kind of, it's not really scumbling that, but just kind of, just your brush, just kind of boom, boom, boom. Scumbling is done dry. Don't mean to confuse you there. But just kind of, just push your brush around, bringing them together. There, like that. And there we go. Take some more light. And remember, try not to, as I'm adding this, I'm adding it thin. So this is one reason why they work together so quickly, because the colors are kind of thin. I'm not super thick with these colors, so I don't want to create textures that makes it harder to change later on here. There we go. Just like that. Like that. And we'll just work this light down here just a bit, and just very lightly with the brush. But, you know, move your brush in so that you're giving the roundness to it. See, I'm moving my brush around so the roundness. Do not mop it. You can because that will destroy some of that. So you don't want to do too much of that, but just move your brush. Here I'm going to take a little shadow, move my brush around for the shadowing like this. And this movement here, just like going this way, gives the feeling of the table. This way, see, you're getting this feeling of this rounding of the just tap a little light there. You get this feeling of this rounding here of the peach. This light little, just barely touching the surface with just a little bit of color. You see, there we go. This is a big one. So we'll be repeating this, but this gives you a good feeling for the roundness there of that particular peach. Let's step back just a bit here, and you can see this whole area here really really works for it. I'm going to just increase the light, 10 and 9 here, or 10 and 8 to make more of a 9. I'm going to increase the light right in here on this peach. Here. There we go. Right in there. Let's take just a touch of that light right in here. And sometimes what they did was, they would wait for these oil paints and stuff that they would do to start to tack up, and then it gets sticky. And right now, this is just tacking just a little bit here, and that's when it's really great to come in on a larger object. We don't need to worry about that on the grapes, but on a larger object, as we get into these peaches and into our flowers and tulips, that tackiness grabs onto your brush, and you can just lightly, impart some very light color here that has this lovely movement to it as it just kind of drags over the surface a bit here. And if you get, it gets this just movement or this little, pebbly type look to it. Now I don't want to have so much that I'm leaving texture, but it gets this uneven look to it that's just wonderful. And they did that a lot to their surfaces. And it's almost a scumbling type of look to it. But it does great things to give the surface a lot of interest to it. And so just as it starts to tack up, it's kind of fun to do that to the object. In there, let's Grisaille in. I'm going to just show you. I still have to refine my Grisaille back in here a little bit more. I can see that. And of course we do have the next time that we're going to be coming through. Well, we won't be doing it in the next lesson. Next lesson we'll go up through the flowers, and we'll establish all of that. Then we're going to come back. We'll work some other areas like the putty and stuff like that, and back areas. We'll glaze back through the top of the painting, and we'll work the flowers and stuff. And then we'll come back. We'll be coming back onto this Grisaille with more details and stuff. But and at that point, we'll start to work a little faster with it, right? Because we'll start to understand really where we're going with the Grisaille. But with this lesson, I wanted to do it individually with you so you can watch how I go about refining something, refining those edges and stuff. Even right here, though, I don't want to make this edge too distinct and clear. So you might want to just blur that edge just a little bit. Now, why? Because that's heading into shadow. That's heading into the edge or that's, moving away from our center interest. We want the viewer to leave this and go up here to that. So these edges will be softened just a bit. Let's go in and let's grab some of these leaves here. Grab it a little bit. That's a little too light. Grab a little bit lighter than what you have here. Let's drop this. This leaf comes right up. It leaves just a little bit of a shadow right as it's going right there next to that peach there. And excuse me, it has a little bit more of a shadow right down in through here. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to put in the light to shadow of the leaf this time. So we have a shadow area of the leaf and the light area of the leaf. And we go to the shadow, and that shadow is going to cut right across here. Just like that. And a little bit of the light right out here on the tips of this one here, and some of it right in here, moving in and out. So you see what I'm doing is I'm looking for the light and the dark of the leaf now, but again, not making it perfect, just a light movement and a dark movement in the leaf. And I think that will probably do for that one. A little bit grayer. And I do have to push back some more shadowing right in there. In fact, I'm going to take a smaller flat, well, smaller than my 3/4 inch. Let's use like a 6 or an 8 or so here. Grab a little bit of 2 here. And let's just push this back just a bit right in there, leaving room for our black later on. There, like that, and around that. But I do like to move these plinth strokes here sideways, side to side. There. Those little flats, which we will use these to help clean up and stuff, really work well for helping you find those found edges here. Here we go. You see those, and we'll take a little bit of this too right out here. But this is going to get us up with our front grapes, our front area of interest. We have to paint the center of interest, but our front interest area there has its values now established. We have the center of interest to do up there at the top, and there's actually, I believe, like another leaf or so coming right down in here. And so I'm just going to leave this undefined with some color right in there, right there for right now. That'll allow me to change that. There will be a, I'm just using my big brush here, a little bit of a shadow here. And again, I'm just looking real quickly for some shape. Now I'm going to go to, that was like a 4, maybe even upwards of a 6 here. I'm just going to put on the light area here. And the light area here on this leaf. We'll drop that down. Just put in a little shadows come through. There we go, like that. And then a big light crossing right up here in front of this one. That's a bit light, but crossing in front of the peach and dropping down because this one sits more on the light. There will be, again, we're looking for shadows. So there will be a shadow of it right in there, like that. And then it will come out like so, here, right about like that. Then you can do this other one over here, over on this side, here, get just the edge to that. Here. Push this shadow over just a bit more. And let's get to our 6, probably a 5 or so in there. So I get the feeling of the shadow and the feeling of the light, but we still are going to refine that. I'm going to take like a little 2 here, my 3 and my 1 together. Take a little 2, and let's push that right in there. Right up in there there we go. That's gonna eventually sit over the edge of this peach here, but that'll get us closer to the look there. And we'll get this ready for next time, which is put just a little bit of this side-to-side shadow right in here. But we'll attack that next time. A little bit of that. And you can darken a little bit of the edge here, right up in here if you want. Little number 2. And again, make sure that you're not using textures. That's the most important thing. Keep the textures out of this so it's easy to change later on. Here we go. Down like that. Okay, so that gives you this nice working in a couple hours here. We've got a nice layer of Grisaille on that. It needs to be refined again. But next time what we'll do is we'll move on up. We'll let this completely dry. We'll move on up into some of the flowers. We'll put some details onto those flowers around our center of interest. Glaze back some of the top a little bit more, okay? And keep evolving this Grisaille, okay? I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining. Get your homework done, and I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.